Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming along. I've been involved with Children's Cancer North through the Children's Cancer Run for, I'm guessing, 25 years or so. And Greg's has been involved for 39 years. And hopefully next year we'll celebrate the 40th with you as well. I think you can see from that why it's been such a long relationship. It's an amazing work that you do. So my brief tonight is to talk to you about Greg's approach to social responsibility. You might think, why is the finance director coming to speak about this? It's just something I've had the privilege of getting involved with through my role. It's something that I love to do. It makes it more than just a job to me. I'm also a trustee of the Greg's Foundation, and I can already see some faces in the audience who've had connections with that organisation over the years. And I'm also involved with Business in the Community, which is a national charity, a membership charity that helps people on the responsible business journey, and I'll come back to a little bit of that as we go. So let's start with some terminology. Oh, no, that's starting with my name. I think we know that. I'm going to kind of talk about what we call our approach to responsible business, the Greg's Pledge. And it's been a way that over the last couple of years we've found of trying to articulate what our plan is. So what I want to do in this is not just talk about what we do, but how we came up with the plan, because I think that's the kind of the interesting thing and perhaps the thing you might be able to take away and use in your own organisation. So I'll come back to the pledge at the end, but that's the sort of the framing of it. I think we need to define a few terms because there's a lot of jargon in this as in other parts of life. So CSR, which was the phrase we led with here, corporate social responsibility. It's been around a long time as a phrase of describing how organizations take a broader view of how they impact on different stakeholders, the economy and the environment. ESG is another phrase you might hear. So that stands for environmental, social and governance. It's another way of thinking about the different areas in which your organization might impact on the world around you. But I've already said responsible business. I always think it's just a simpler way of thinking about it at the end of the day. We aspire to be a responsible business, and we try and think of it in that way. We have to respond to the ESG movement because our investors, our shareholders, our employees all expect us to. But in simple terms, I think just thinking about this as running your business or your organization in a responsible way is the best way to think about it. So, why would you do this? Why get engaged? Why have you come along tonight? Why are you interested at all? I'm sure you all have different motivations. For me, I think the most important one is that our employees at Greg's not demand it, but they join us and they support us because of the way we impact on the world around us. It started as a family business. I think those family values run deep, and we've worked very hard over the years as it's become a bigger company and a public company, and as the family have lost ownership, we've tried to protect those same values because we really value them in terms of the way we run the business. It's a very effective thing to drive a strong business, but it comes through, I think, in this responsible approach as well. So I think in terms of employee engagement, that's never been more important. It is so hard at the moment to recruit and retain people that it's not just about money, it's about whether you enjoy working where you work. I think there's a personal aspect, which hopefully has already come over, certainly for me, and I hope for you, wanting to feel that you are sort of engaging with the world in a responsible way in terms of the impact you have with it. And for us, as a public company, there's a very clear agenda, which is this ESG approach. So investors now demand that we meet increasingly high standards for the way we engage with the world, and we will lose investors if we don't do that. I mean, they literally kind of hold us to account. But I think finally, our customers, your customers, to the extent that you have customers, are increasingly starting to demand that as well. And there are certainly, it's a big risk factor for your business and therefore for your investors if you're not mitigating those risks by acting in a responsible way. So that's all very well, but it doesn't just happen. You have to have a plan. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how you develop a plan. Now, I think this is strategic. I don't think it's just about, making a list and sort of thinking I'll copy what someone else has done. I think you have to think really deeply about what your organization is, where it's come from, what makes it different and better to other organizations, because that will probably give you the clues as to how you should approach this agenda as well. So a few questions I think you could ask. What are we naturally good at? If I apply that to Greg's, it should be in the food area. So our whole business is around food provision and value food provision. So we see food poverty as something that we can address because of who we are. We also are very much rooted in communities. So again, there's a link there that says, actually, if you're good with food and you're very close to communities, there should be ways you can support those communities, given how much they've supported you over the years. So things like that, I've already mentioned, it's the family business and the culture of it means that we think the degree of employee engagement is really important. So how we treat our staff becomes an important part of this agenda as well. So think about the things that make your business work well and the things that you feel you have a talent for and make you different from your competition. I think you should also think about what worries you. You know, what are the things you see maybe as risk factors for your business? This is always kind of the more difficult one, isn't it? I mean, for Greg's, if we're honest, it's an indulgent sort of food area of food. You know, it's not sort of selling lettuce. So we should be worried about the obesity agenda, and we are. And we try and manage a strand of this agenda to make sure that we're facing up to that and dealing with making the business better over the years and addressing those factors. And I'll come back to it when I show you our plan. So what are the things you think could be a risk to your business if you don't move with the times and if you don't move that agenda on? And finally, what are the kind of the things which you absolutely have to do? And I think there are some of these, certainly in our industry. Biodiversity. You know, some people have thought deeply about this. Some people may have never thought about it. But making sure that the earth can continue as it is in the long term is very dependent on how we behave, how we procure food. All those things have a huge impact. And clearly, the carbon agenda is something that we all have a part to play in. So there may be some things you just absolutely have to have, either because your investors demand it or because you just know that it's something you have to play a part in. So you can ask yourself those questions. You'll probably come up with a bit of a list. I would encourage you to look at what others are doing as well, because sometimes you just get ideas. So have a look at what others put on their websites, and you'll find most public companies have had to publish something on this already, so they may be a source. They may not be the best comparison for your business, though. So if your business or your organization or your charity, just look at what others in your sector are doing and look for ideas there. And then I would encourage you to check what you've come up with against this framework. So this is the UN's global goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. And they are 17 things that fundamentally are the framework, if you like, for looking after life on Earth. And we've used this as a sense check to see, are there things we've missed in that process? Because we've started from saying, what are the things we should be obviously good at doing or feel we should do to mitigate risk? And then we've sense checked ourselves against this. And at the same time as using this as a bit of a check, I would also encourage you not to feel like you have to contribute to every one, because there will be things you just can't really do. That's for someone else to do. Peace and justice, for example, number 16. I don't have anything in our plan that I could map to peace and justice. I just think that's in someone else's world. It's really important, clearly, but it's not something we can do. But life below water, we absolutely can do in terms of making sure that the impact we have on water streams and the way we procure sort of fish and that sort of thing. So you look at these and you sort of think, well, which are the areas you can really address? And for us, things like no hunger, for example, are a big issue. Gender equality, those sort of things. Reduced inequalities is a massive agenda for us, and I'm really proud that this week we achieved the National Equality Standard, which is a benchmark for social inclusion and sort of diversity. So use it as a way of just sense checking whether you've missed anything, but please don't feel you have to address all of this. It's just there to try and create a plan that works for you. And that's really important, is it's something that you feel you can own and you can actually drive. You can also look at others' models, as I said. Because ultimately you're going to have to tell the story. And it's really important that you feel able to communicate it externally and particularly with your own employees and the people that you work with. So look for models that help to articulate what you're doing. This is just one. This is the business and the community model, which frames everything around healthy communities and healthy environment. And so the elements of the plan fit under those headings. But it's not the only way of doing it. And I'll show you our way of doing it in just a moment. But I think you need to find a way of finding a structure that allows you to talk clearly about it. So this is the Greggs Pledge, and I'll just sort of finish on this. We've been, I suppose, going at this for many, many, many years, but 2 years ago, we tried to articulate our plan in a new way and refresh it, and basically make a 5-year commitment to make significant improvements in 10 areas. We organised the plan under 3 pillars. So we talked about having stronger, healthier communities, a safer planet, and doing better business. So those 3 areas we thought sort of captured the essence of the pledges that go underneath. So the first one is all about trying to make sure that we address the needs of people in our communities who don't have enough to eat, and also improving the diet of our customer base and therefore the nation over time. So it addresses the obesity point that I made earlier, but it also uses our ability as a food producer to bring food to people who need it, because our whole business model creates waste food, because it's a daily fresh model. You know, everything that's not sold today isn't sold tomorrow. So we need to find ways of distributing that food. So you can see the sort of things we do. I mean, we've got quite a well-known breakfast club program that's now in more than 700 primary schools across the country, where we work with partners to provide a free breakfast to children who might not otherwise get it. We have targets for reducing the amount of waste food and making sure we can channel it to people who can use it, whether that's collecting it from shops or giving it away in other ways. And we aim to have outlet shops across the country, and there are a few in the northeast. It really this started in the northeast. We used to call them second day shops. There's one on the bottom of the Westgate Road at Arthur's Hill. There's one over at Howden. There are a couple in Sunderland. And what we used to do is they were just a way of channeling the food that was left over one day and selling it the next day. What we've found is that the demand for that is increasing. It's a great way of ensuring that food doesn't get wasted. And actually, we found we're making quite a nice profit on them as well, which we felt a little bit guilty about, because it was really a way of trying to redistribute food. I mean, they're a great place where you can, if you're a charity, you can come and collect surplus food. So we've come up with a way of thinking about the economics of that shop, which is that we will earn a return that justifies us investing in the shop, but nothing more. And the rest of it gets distributed to charities in the area of that shop who work on food poverty. And I think that's a really lovely kind of model where it's helping us to push surplus food into communities, and if we profit from it, we encourage the sort of the chain around that shop to do more and support what we're trying to do. And then finally, healthier choices. This is part of the obesity agenda, so making sure that the choice is there for people, but increasingly that's not just about, I think it's too easy to just say we've given people the choice between a donut and a fruit pod. We've just recently gone a bit further on that, because we discovered that the donut was half the price of the fruit pot. So if you bought your sandwich and you're thinking, what should I have? The donut is going to cost you half as much. So we've actually deliberately sort of factored into this plan that we will invest profit margin in trying to influence behaviour. So now if you go into a Greggs and you buy a sandwich, you'll notice you can get a fruit pot half price, because it then competes like for like with the price of a donut. So you can genuinely make that choice without having to spend more. So we will do things like that over time to try and influence and nudge behaviour without, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So stronger, healthier communities is one pillar. The safer planet piece is, I guess, something obviously that we all have to get on that agenda. Over the next 5 years, we'll move to 100% renewable energy, but that's just the start of obviously the pathway towards net zero, which we all have to be on. But the first 5 years of that, a lot of the technology will still be embryonic, but it's part of a longer journey. We need to evolve our store design, because most of our carbon is created through the store operations. With more than 2,000 stores, we have to find greener ways of building those stores and running them. So we've, in the next 5 years, set a target to incorporate a lot more from our concept eco-store into the main estate. And packaging is a big issue. Obviously, there's too much packaging, too much plastic. Just look what's left on your desk after you have your lunch. That's got to change over time, and we've got to find ways that we can both reduce it and recycle more of it. So the planetary impact is the middle pillar. And then the final one we called better business. It's sort of, you can cut this different ways, but we think this works for us. So the whole diversity agenda and making sure that people feel welcome when they come to work at Greggs is something we've moved on massively in the last 2 or 3 years. And then if we look back down our supply chain, then the way we source is really important to make sure that that is fully sustainable. There are issues over all sorts of things in the supply chain some of them you've probably never even thought about, but we have to be able to look back and make sure that we're managing that. And if we don't, the press will out us, frankly. And you can almost measure how good you are on this by how many stories are run about you. And we have many, many fewer than we did 10 years ago. And animal welfare is a key one for us because, despite the famous vegan sausage roll, there's still quite a lot of meat protein that goes into our products. So making sure that the animals that are in that supply chain are treated well is really important to us. And it's interesting in terms of how you influence a company's agenda. 5 years ago, a guy turned up at our AGM and he stood up in a meeting like this and he asked the chairman a question. The chairman quickly passed it to the chief executive, but it was all about farm animal welfare. And he pointed out that there was this group that had set up what they call the business benchmark on farm animal welfare, and that we scored 4 on a scale of 5. And he said, well, what are you going to do about it? And it was very effective. We're now at 2, alongside people like Sainsbury's, and our ambition is to be at 1, which would put us alongside the likes of Waitrose. So, those things about the visibility of what you do, you should just assume that, I think, in this day and age, that everything you do is visible, and you better be proud of it. So we're on a journey with that as well. So it gives you kind of a feel for what we do. I guess you can tell we've put a lot of effort into it. We sort of, I suppose, have to because we're a public company, but actually we want to as well. And the important thing is that we are very public now about sort of measurement and tracking. So over the next 5 years, every year, we will publish an update on the pledge. We've just done the year 1 report. You can find it on the website. Where's Katie from my team? Hiding in the audience somewhere. Katie has only been with us less than a year in my finance team, but is now measuring every quarter our progress on all of those 10 pledges. And sharing it with our operating board so we can see the progress we're making. And everything on there has a champion. So somebody on our operating board is accountable for each of those to make sure that the chief executive knows where to look when she's looking for accountability. And for me, it's the first one. So I champion the Breakfast Club program. And as I say, there are a few people in this room who've helped me on that journey, for which I thank you. So I think that's me done. I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure how long that's been, but hopefully that gives you a flavour for what we do, how we approach it, and how we thought it through, how it developed. And I'll be happy to come back later and take questions. But for now, I'll pass you over.